The meeting of Fire and Police Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Bill James.
Here.
Fred Vogel.
Here.
Ron Seco.
Here.
Fred Levering.
Here.
And Steve Berger will be absent.
We do have a forum. Okay. Public comment. Do we have any public comments?
I have a public comment.
Okay.
My name is John Cullen. I live at 47 Cardinal Road, and I wanted to talk about the agenda item on the Hanover parking regulation to restrict trucks parking. I went and talked to this truck driver. I drove past his house and he was out on the street, and I had a conversation with him, and he's not even aware that this zoning is under review. So that's kind of my first point. And he said that he's lived there 20 years and no one has ever complained to him about his parking. And so I'm kind of curious where the complaints came from, and are the complaints really valid? Because wouldn't the truck driver get a complaint if it was his problem? So I'm on both sides of this fence. I mean, I don't want semi-trucks parked in Wyomissing either, but you know, Wyomissing is, as a borough, is really 4 or 5 different neighborhoods. And where he's parking, you know, if he did street park that truck, if no one has complained in the past, I don't see what's wrong with it. But if you are going to open up the zoning and look at the zoning regulations, then I have another ask, which I'll get to in a minute. I want to talk a second about the economy roofing truck that's been parked on Forest Avenue. The inspection is expired. I think you could get that truck moved if you wanted to get it moved. Now, maybe he'll just bring it right back, but I just wanted to say that. So if we're going to talk about parking regulations, I want to talk about a neighbor who parks his truck legally. I understand his truck is legally parked, and I have no objection to legal parking. But what I do object to is storing of his car, his pickup truck. That truck only moves once or twice a year. I think he drove it to a parade last year, and maybe he got it inspected. Right now, the truck's been covered up since October. Do we know? I'm pretty sure it's inspected and registered now, but you know, when will it expire? But I think my point is this the look and feel that we want in Wyomissing? Is this how we want neighbors to be able to treat neighbors? To just store cars in front of someone else's house? Now, I understand it's a street and it's legal parking on streets, but is the neighbor just really maybe trying to be annoying? Or is this a convenience for him? It's an inconvenience for me. About 10 years ago, we got a letter from our insurance company. Just for your awareness, I gave Michelle a copy of the letter. And it was undated, unsigned. And it said, you know, for your information, this car parks up on this corner, obstructing traffic, and it rarely moves. Well, this is the exact same place that this truck is parked now, and has been parked for years. So I don't object to parking, but I object to the storing. And so if you're going to open up the ordinance and review the no parking situation over in Hampton Heights, then I ask that maybe you look at maybe a 72-hour limit. Now, I know that's been called unenforceable in the past, but other boroughs have 72-hour limits. Or maybe someone could have a conversation with this neighbor and just say this isn't appropriate. Because this is not really how neighbors should be treating neighbors, and we shouldn't need ordinances to fix things like this. But I ask that you look into stored vehicles and try to take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have
Okay.
I have 3 items.
Yeah.
Adrian J. Wyomissing.
Street address, please.
48 Cardinal Road, doesn't matter?
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does. It's not required, sir. I am a resident of Wyomissing. Pedestrian crossing, item 6B on Penn Avenue near Post Office. I want to speak in strong support of creating clearly marked and safe pedestrian crossings in front of the post office on Penn Ave. A pedestrian was tragically killed in January trying to cross from the post office to a parking space across the street. Senator Schwank has already urged the borough and PennDOT to take action, and the PennDOT assessment, which is attached to the board documents, supports marked pedestrian crossings. I've heard the discussions, I'm not gonna take too long. You're saying, well, people will still cross. Yeah, but when they don't have a crossing, of course they're gonna cross illegally. What are gonna do? They're gonna walk a mile until the next crossing. At least you give them a crossing within reasonable distance. This is not a theoretical concern. Someone has died. The chief has said, well, it's only a death in 25 years or something like that. That's not how we should see this. Let's not wait until another person dies. This committee has the opportunity and the responsibility to act. The large vehicle parking, we've discussed this. The ordinance under chapter 15, section 4.3 can be simply amended. I've seen in the documents a whole, new ordinance. Personally, I don't see the reason. I think it was just a mistake. It was an omission that I-1 was not listed in chapter 15. I think that's a simple, it doesn't have to take forever to introduce I-1 over there. I think this is taking way too long. Trucks are allowed for docking and everything. And I have a final statement to say. I want to raise a point that absolutely falls under the jurisdiction of this committee, because public safety begins with public trust in the system that governs. Election interference, or even the perception of it, is a threat to the democratic process and a threat to community stability. No community can feel safe when its residents believe that access to the ballot is selectively enforced or influenced behind the scenes. While I will not name names or reference specific incidents, I want it noted that certain troubling events related to candidate eligibility are still being reviewed, and I trust that the full truth will emerge. I have always stood for transparency and accountability, and I raise this today not as a personal issue, but as a public safety concern, because when people lose faith in fairness, that's when we see division, anger, and even unrest. This committee has a role in ensuring that the democratic process is respected, because it is the foundation of everything else we protect. Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to Westenberg Sandals.
Tony Tender reports. Any questions, concerns on that? I have nothing else.
Has anybody, you've all seen the response report for the month? Anybody have any questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much. Moving on to West Side Emergency Management. Oh,
That was quick.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready to go. On my sheet here, just a quick update. Attended our recent training sessions out at the county there. One involves volunteer organizations that they are looking at to try to help or assist in disasters, some of which we've had before, where groups have shown up ready and willing to help, and have come from, like, the last time we had somebody come in the door was from a church somewhere down in Virginia. We have no trouble with people trying to help, and it's great. The only problem with some of that is, and I still have a problem with, trying to check on who these people are. We don't have a quick way of doing that. And I hate to tell people no who are coming in here ready to roll their sleeves up and, get dirty or something, hammer things back together or whatever, but I had to tell that group, I said we couldn't do it. Which is, it gripes me to say that, no, we had to, and that is a lot of these VOAG groups. There are some that are more local, which is much better, and even there, it is, I think it's difficult to check out who's coming and who they have, and if something were to go wrong, or somebody gets hurt, you know, who's responsible for everything. It's a terrible thing to have to go over, but that's the way it is. So we have, or I have, I guess, told a lot of these people that we can't do it unless we get you somehow signed up and vetted to check you out. They haven't any trouble with that, but it's just, I think you should know or be aware of the fact that in case somebody comes in sometime and says, oh, they said no, they don't want any help, well, it's just an issue that needs to be checked on more carefully. The other training session was on the crisis track, which is the identifying and reporting of initial damage reporting now. They're finally working on getting that done. Berks County and even Pima has decided that they would like to go with that system. It's all mostly computerized, which adds the, I guess I'll pull some of the flavor here, because it requires a little more training and a little more heads up. Work out in the field requires people's phones or iPads, which is always an issue too, whether we have enough of everything to cover it. But I guess we'll only know that when we have something else that we really have to kind of dig into here and see how it all works. It looks really terrific, and is something that's good for keeping track of paperwork, but there's some things there that we might find out later on, or I'm expecting that there'll probably be a few bumps as we go along here. The open house I want to report on, we had, and I thank the people from Wyomissing who came. No one else seemed to want to jump in and come around and take a look. We have some faithfuls who come, and that includes Ron, Shanna's husband, who came along too, was interested in some of our communication things, and that's fine. And those who were there, I think, got some information that they were looking for. I would hope that we could get some others in the future, and I'm going to look at trying to find another way of somehow getting them to show up, I guess I'll call it. The MCI drill, the Mass Casualty Incident drill, is still on, or is proceeding, and it'll be on the 10th of April, and we are, the West Side Regional will be there to assist where needed. It really is a Kumru Township thing, which includes, beside fire, EMS, and others involved. So we'll be down there to kind of see what we can help with there. And the only other thing was we had our quarterly meeting last week. Bill was our representative and was there, of course. And at this point, that's where I'm at, unless anyone has any other questions about any information I have there.
At the open house the other night, I thought that the railroad information was particularly interesting. It's been in the news, unfortunately, of late, and that was well presented.
Yeah, one of the deputies has, well, we have lots of information, but he put together kind of a little PowerPoint, and he has presented that at some other gatherings, I'll say, and has done a good job with it. And he shaved it down enough for the meeting we had there. Otherwise, he could go on and on and on. But yeah, it is. I'm glad to hear that. I'll pass that along to him for sure.
He was a Fleetwood police officer, wasn't he?
He is a Robinson Township police officer, actually. He lives up, actually he lives out of Byrne Township. He is originally from Fleetwood, graduated from Fleetwood.
He knows Tom.
Yeah. He has good information. He's done a good job with it. Okay,
extra people before they volunteer, which is very common in any volunteer situation.
No, I know there is, you're right. I'll tell you right now, we do not have one as, we don't, like our
Yeah.
regional thing. The county, I don't know if they have one. I mean, I know there are protocols for that kind of thing, and even for the people who help us, you know, there should probably be some other.
Yeah, I
Checks
feel
on
like,
that.
yeah, it shouldn't be hard to set up a protocol.
Well-
You can't really volunteer anywhere without a background
I know
check.
you can't, so anytime there's,
And then some sort of simple liability form that they sign. You know, you can't go skydiving without one, so you're not gonna sue the
well,
police.
we do cover some of what you're talking about through what they call, the county calls a duly enrolled list.
Mhm.
And you have to be on that list to be covered, and we can say, oh, Tom, is he with you? And we can say, yes, they're signed up, kind of thing. But more detail with that volunteer thing needs to be addressed more carefully.
Yeah.
I agree, I'm with you.
Is
Yeah,
there
I
any
mean,
parallel-
people who wanna volunteer are more than happy
I
to
know
do
that.
that,
It's-
but it's, yeah, it's about
is
getting
there
that
any
information.
parallel to what we do with the rec program and so on?
That would be a question for Randy.
Yo,
Yeah.
Randy.
All of our, that's a great point you brought up, we do take for parents who come and volunteer, but we don't do background checks on these
If
people.
they're working with children, they should definitely have background checks.
Well, we have to
Yes.
go
Anybody.
Well, we do with all of our summer employees,
Right.
but if somebody volunteered to work at the egg hunt, I haven't in the past, I wrote it down that I should look into it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would look into the legality of it. In some instances, you have to have a background check, and in other instances, you don't when it comes to children. And I think if you have people with background checks, and this is totally different topic, yeah, I mean, you
No.
volunteer, but, as far as children, there are specific protocols, like if they're left alone with the children, they absolutely have to have a background check. Child abuse clearance and all of the works, but, yeah.
The kind of things I deal with, it's like, you need it now.
Right, yeah,
thing.
like
That's
we
the
can get
hard-
the
that's the
information
hard
out
part.
there, like,
Oh,
hey,
I
if you
know.
intend to volunteer in the
Hey, we
community,
need it now, here's the
Yeah.
trouble, we need you to,
it's not.
but I get it though. I'll see what I can do for
Is
that.
it something we should bring up? You know, now we got another 3 months for EMA meeting, but,
Well, I'll put it on the list.
you know, we can
Maybe,
actually, you know,
Heidi can steer us in some direction there.
and if we need support
It
from,
needs to be speeded up, that's the
if
thing.
we need support from all the municipalities, I'm sure we can all sign a letter. You know.
That's fine.
Are there any FEMA documents that are available to your EMA that would
So,
speak to the issue of
for that,
background checks?
um,
There are things you need background checks for, and there are things you don't need background checks for.
Not that I'm aware of, but I can do more research. Not that I'm aware of. But I'll need to do it, I'll check. I agree with the whole thing, it's just, I'll double check. Or not double check.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Tom, very good. Okay, moving on to, the fire department, Chief Holmes.
Good afternoon. For the month of March, it was another busy month for the fire department. We had 154 total responses for the month. We're up to 479 to date. Mutual aid continues to stay around the same with what we're giving out to our neighboring communities. Next month, I'll be adding mutual aid received into the report to show what we're receiving on our end when we call others into the borough. The turnout time, the average is 2 minutes and 19 seconds. We're getting about 4.36 responders per incident. The department did year-to-date 302 hours of training. 73 of that was done in March. And we're up to 9,750 for fire loss for the year. And I added back in the inspections now that we've kind of cleaned up how we can pull that information from our record management system and have it more readily available to show that. But again, March was a very busy month. First 3 months of the year have been that way. We look to probably stay on the same track. The picture that you see on the screen is the incident distribution heat map showing where all we are getting out to in the parts of the borough where the majority of our calls are, which typically is in that northern part of the borough, in the more commercial area. A quick overview on the first quarter stats. From mutual aid given, we've given quite a bit over the year so far. Again, working on breaking down and seeing what we have received so I can have some numbers to talk about there at the council meeting. But from code enforcement and fire inspection perspective, we're on track. We're getting into our busy part of the year. April through September, we seem to have the majority of our occupancies, our commercial occupancies, come up for their inspection. So they'll be out and very busy here picking up towards the end of April.
Can I ask you a question on
Yes, sir.
inspections? Are there required fire drills or are they optional you attend?
So we attend for the schools and witness those, and we have done some by request for other commercial occupancies, but it's
Are
not.
they are required by the schools?
They are required by the schools.
And your attendance is optional as
Yeah, for everyone so far this school year, we've attended over at the high school. So looking forward into the council packet, will be a more detailed report on what we've done in the first quarter of 2025, with some projections on where we're looking to be as a department to meet some of our goals and objectives for 25. Next item that I have on my part of the agenda here is to talk about the deputy chief and entry level hiring process. We're getting ready to, in May, start the entry level, which we discussed at personnel. My concern with running the entry level and the deputy chief at the same time would be the amount of applications coming through, making sure that they go into the right process. So I'm looking at pushing the deputy chief to kick that off after we close the entry level application period. So looking at after June 16th to start that process. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up on the committee of what that looks like. I have a meeting coming up with Bucks County Community College to talk about the entry level written exam, and we'll be discussing at the same time redesigning the deputy chief's written exam. We had great success using them in the deputy chief's process that we had previously run. The next item here was the civil service rules and regulations. Currently, the civil service solicitor is working on refining the language in the document to have more clarity for how and when veterans preference and college degree points would be applied, as well as working continuously to clean up some of the grammatical issues and items that are in that document.
School investment activity?
That needs to move forward because of hiring, and civil service is already scheduled to meet next Friday to act on it. A revised version of the rules and regulations, once received from the civil service solicitor, will be provided in the council packet.
Are we addressing the gender issue of he, her, him? I understand it says under 1.2, he and him refers to both genders, but current administration does not agree with that. And I think there's a discrepancy, and sometimes it says he or him, sometimes it says he/she. There's an inconsistency there.
That is some of the grammatical work that we're going back through and addressing.
Okay. Are we removing the 1.2 gender and
I would have.
Let me specify, clarify some things here. There was, Janet Barnett, took the time to review in depth the entire report, or the entire qualifications and rules, regs, and sent an email to Chief Holmes, Michelle Becker, Chris Hartman, and myself yesterday about this. She has some very valid points here. Most of it is grammatic in nature, but I don't think that it is enough that we need to stop the process to review this, because now we're talking another month at least. These rules and regs have been reviewed before and we approved them. Now all of a sudden a new batch of corrections comes about. When's this gonna stop? Okay? Jana, I agree, you're justified, but I think we need to keep this moving along. I mean, we need firefighters desperately, okay, to fill vacancies. The chief needs a deputy desperately, okay? And I don't want to see us, not to mention the amount of overtime that is being paid right now with not having these other firefighters. So, while we can look at these, I don't want to see the process come to a screeching halt. I would like it to continue as it was intended, and as long as Attorney Becker and the rest of the Civil Service Commission is comfortable with the current wording, then I think we should move forward, and then we can come back later and look at revamping some of the issues that has been suggested.
Well, certainly, I did point out many grammatical problems, but my concerns are, for example, we have a list of EEO categories which we're considering, which are inconsistent with the employee handbook. Seems to me they ought to be consistent. The non-discrimination policy. We have, on the one hand, saying that the deputy should have, we would prefer that the deputy have a degree in 3 different areas. And then when we give points for a college degree, that doesn't matter. You could major in basket weaving and you could have no credits in any of those areas, and you're still gonna get the full number of points. That's insane. We need to give the number of points commensurate with how helpful the qualifications are. We allow people to have any old driver's license, which I guess includes motorcycle. Seems to me it ought to be at least a 4-wheel vehicle they should be licensed for. Or we allow people to come back after a year or two's absence without requiring that we update their criminal background, requiring that we do minimal updating. So I don't personally view these as grammatical. I think they're important. I also don't think that it should take long to review them, since I took the trouble of making detailed comments, which are easy, assuming you can read my handwriting, to figure out. So I would hope that the solicitor would clean up this mess, including outdated disqualifications. We shouldn't be adopting it the way it is, but I don't think it will take that long to fix it. And I hope Solicitor Becker does.
So are there practical issues that need to be addressed versus strictly grammatical issues? And can they be?
I don't think anything needs to be, you bring up basket weaving. Well, so I apply and I have a degree in European history. Well, is that better than basket weaving?
No, you shouldn't get, I don't think you should get any points for either one of them.
Some of Janet's comments are definitely substantive and not simply grammatical. My recommendation to the committee would be to have Jana's comments be forwarded to Attorney Becker for him to take into consideration with the revisions that he's preparing for the next Civil Service Commission meeting. But in order to keep this process moving, my recommendation further to the committee would be to approve in concept the revisions to the deputy chief qualifications, which is really the substantive part of this that Chief Holmes is bringing to the committee for review. And if you were to recommend conceptually these changes to the deputy chief qualifications, subject to revisions to be made by the Civil Service Commission, and further subject to council as a whole reviewing the entirety of the fire civil service regs in advance of the council meeting, I think we could achieve the purposes of moving this forward and also having Jana's comments be taken into consideration to the extent that I think there is merit in them.
Are the comments from Attorney Becker, are they designed to be comments that need to be adopted, or they're suggested for us to take?
Well, my understanding is that Attorney Becker's revisions are gonna go to the Civil Service Commission for review at its next meeting, which will occur in advance of the next council. It will not be.
No, the intent was take it to fire and police, go to council next Tuesday. Civil service had already been scheduled to meet April
Oh,
11th, because
okay.
we had set the timing up intentional to keep.
I thought Civil Service Commission would meet before the next council meeting.
No, so the intent was you will have a revised version incorporating the changes as part of your council packet to review before council meets next
Okay,
Tuesday.
but they will be the revisions that Dan will have prepared for the Civil Service Commission meeting also. I mean, it's gonna be the
Assuming
same.
Dan responds to my stalking to get that done in time for the council packets by the end of the week, yes.
Right, okay.
So my question is, are those recommendations required to be accepted, or will they be debated in either one or both, or neither of those organizations that have gathered?
Well, they can always be debated. I mean, if you receive a document as part of your council packet that is not acceptable to a majority of council, I mean, it doesn't have to go forward.
Well, it would seem to me that with the way our council meetings proceed, that the tolerance level of debating issues involving one subject doesn't go beyond 2. So if there's 10 suggestions and we're going to debate those at a council meeting, I suggest that that's probably not the place to do it. We should be doing it in a setting where we have time to debate it, as opposed to it's almost 8 o'clock.
Well, I don't think we're in a position today to say that we have a final version of this document today to review and discuss today. If you don't wanna rely on the preparation of a revised version that Attorney Becker's gonna prepare, the only alternative we have is to have a special meeting, either in advance. Well, I think, frankly, it would have to be, well, when is the Civil Service Commission meeting?
Friday the 11th at noon.
Friday, okay. Hypothetically, somewhere between now and the Civil Service Commission meeting at the end of next week, if there was a special council meeting, you could have further discussion of this rules and regulations.
Or alternatively, the week after if we had to. I mean, that Civil Service Commission meeting is on a Friday, you could do it, we have meetings scheduled the following week. I think this is an odd month for infrastructure, but personnel.
Okay, if we wait until the following week for a special council meeting, and frankly, it would be my preference to have the Civil Service Commission work on this more before it comes back to council. Is that gonna meet your schedule for the recruitment of officers?
Look, I'm thinking through the timeline here. It should, yes.
You're talking 2 days
Yeah.
later.
It
Like
should
business
easily
days.
meet it.
And we are talking about going through the deputy chief issue and segregating that from these issues we're speaking about now.
Well, I think
There's some about both the
Yeah.
firefighters
So we should,
and,
if we're gonna have a special meeting, we have a comprehensive.
yes,
All right,
we
but
do
I
both.
thought there was nothing in the deputy chief outline that was suggestive or not suggestive that we could move forward on that issue and the other issue.
well, that's not entirely true. I mean,
Okay.
part of what Jana was commenting on was how to treat the educational points
Okay, so it's related.
for the deputy chief
That's
position.
fine.
So, based upon what Chris has said, we do have a motion before us to approve, table, or deny, recommending council approve the adoption of with the revisions to the Civil Service Commission. So, imagine we just want to table it at this point.
Let me ask, is the substantive issue the college credit? Couldn't we kind of weigh in on that now and see the thing, how the Civil Service Commission addresses it, but
We could do that, yeah, and
but all these other issues fall into the same job description. We're not talking about it for the deputy chief, but it's around the rest of the fire department, so they're all going to be included. in
No,
that chief's job.
the college credit points apply to the deputy chief position only.
yeah, so that's one of the points in Ethan's revisions to the deputy fire chief qualifications is the educational credit. I don't think that's the only change though, I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, the changes are either redlined or in cases where language was added, blue lined.
Okay, so the college degree goes from a requirement to a preference, and then there are points for educational advancement.
And in terms of the points for educational advancement, this is identical to language coming out of the police department rules and regs for entry level. Chief, am I correct, Chief Phillips? Am I correct that in the police department rules and regulations, college points are not applicable for promotions?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And also as a friendly reminder, part of the reason there was a need to revise the job description for the deputy chief position is because when we went through the most recent hiring process approximately 2 to 3 months ago, we ended up with one viable candidate who then did not pass the oral exam.
So what's the point of this revision? Changing it?
So in the personnel meeting, we had discussed changing the job description, that it be preferred for an education.
Right.
We wanted to mirror that in the civil service rules and regulations as well. We also capture in here from the job description the special note about the borough reserving the right to move forward an otherwise exceptional candidate, whether they have a degree or not. So that was captured in here. We also cleaned up some of the language to match the 10 years of progressive responsibility, experience serving as a company officer, some of the other qualifications. The threshold for passing was changed in here to match what we had talked about and discussed, to drop that back to a 70% versus keeping it at an 80. We also moved to add the college degree portion in here for this specific position. And just looking back at how we provide the educational bonus for those in the fire service that have the degrees, we require that it be something that's specific to our industry, that's specific to the fire service, whether it's emergency management, some sort of public policy, or a fire science type of degree. So I would say, in consideration of what Ms. Barnett had supplied, that should be identified in here as well, so that it's clear we're talking apples to apples.
So those extra points you would earn
If you have a
have to be in that field?
yeah.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense.
So if we do that, is that it?
The question still remains, and this is where Attorney Becker has to weigh in on it, is when do these points get applied in the process? Veterans preference points get applied at the end. Where are we going to apply the college credit points? Is that going to be in the beginning when they submit their application? Is it going to be after the written exam? Is it going to be after the oral interview?
So
Just
what
need to
relevance
clarify.
what relevance does a veteran's points have with regard to if he walks in the door wearing his military uniform, and he would ostensibly be able to have points for that, he goes downhill and the rest of the stuff, those points are useless. So what's the difference when he gets his points?
So, I mean, the way the law is
Let
in,
me let the chief answer the question.
Oh.
What's for us?
You were gonna say, Michelle, what, the law?
and I'm saying this out of deference to Chief Holmes because I had the conversation with him back around Friday. Chief Holmes was not able to join us, so I do not want him to reiterate something that was not spoken directly to him. The way it was explained to me, the intent of the veterans preference points is so that other bonus points, apparently there are bonus points for being bilingual, for education, for all types of certifications. Those should never trump the veterans preference points. So the veterans preference point should always take precedent. Any other points being applied should never bump a candidate that does not have veterans preference points above a candidate that does. So it is intentional as to how they're applied. And Solicitor Becketer's point was that for clarity's purposes, so no one is ever misconstruing the rules and regulations, we should clearly spell that out, not just in fire, but Chief Phillips heads up, this would also be something he wants to clarify.
This is not, it's first I'm hearing about this
Yes.
kind of thing.
I asked him to reach out to you on Friday, because knowing you're going through this process right now, and
I didn't hear from him, so I don't know what we're talking about.
I don't think he's overly concerned you're doing it incorrectly from what he had seen and what we've discussed previously, but the point was we should be clearly spelling out how and when they're applied, so there's no misunderstanding.
But those points won't get you to 70%.
Correct. So his point was all candidates come in, whether they have veterans points or not, all candidates come in and take the oral and written in this case. The veterans preference points cannot be added to get a candidate that say got a 67 on a written or oral test to get them to pass. They are added after a passing score is received on those tests to then get them to wherever that gets them in overall scoring. There could be a case though where you have someone with veterans preference points that says scores an 80, gets the 10 points, gets a 90, but you have two non-veteran candidates who take the oral and written and score a 95, they automatically trump because of how they scored the candidate with the veterans preference points. So it is important how and when they're added.
Yeah, so they're ahead of the veteran at that
Correct.
point. Yeah, at the end.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
That's how we did it with the police department.
So he doesn't per se have concerns about how you're doing it, he just, again, if we're gonna spell it out in fire, we should spell it out in police.
So,
That would require us to upgrade, downgrade, whatever, to get equal.
yes, what do we need to down here?
Well, as far as today's meeting, there's, I had made a suggestion earlier about conceptually stating your support for the deputy chief revisions that Chief Holmes is asking for. Subject to final language being prepared and presented to you with the council packet. That's one option. Another option is to just table this and say, we'll take it up when we have a revised policy to review as a council and, essentially not have a recommendation from this committee. I think those are the two options for the committee.
I don't want to delay this any further. I mean, if it requires a special meeting, then so be it.
I've already, as early as before 7 o'clock this morning, communicated to Solicitor Becker, we need to connect today or tomorrow to talk about this. I know he's a very busy man, worst case scenario, I will see him at a zoning hearing on Wednesday. But, I will keep his nose to the grindstone if possible.
And then I think, as far as the committee go, we should just table it for right now until you get a chance to talk to them.
If there is a possibility that the revised draft would be ready in time for the council packet or UK with either Chief Holmes adding it under his report or I can add it under my report for council.
Yes.
But it still doesn't change issues that we were talking about that are different than a veterans issue. If that's solved, you still have the issues that Jana has articulated that we haven't discussed in depth, so we can't.
They're going to be discussed at the Civil Service Commission.
I thought it was with us, the council.
It would technically be both, but as Chief Holmes indicated, those are pretty simple changes he could make under the college degree section to indicate that it would mirror the degrees required to be considered a candidate for the
Yeah, but
position.
you're talking about the veterans issues.
No, they're
Talking about
separate.
all these issues that
Will be incorporated into the draft.
we don't know what they are to debate them, which is why we're gonna have a special meeting to talk about all those issues to see if we're all on the same page with the other 4, 5, or 6 comments that Janet has, that we don't know what they are.
I don't know that we're gonna be able to debate how the veterans' preferences handled. I mean, I'm gonna defer to Attorney Becker on coming up with a legally appropriate format for how that's gonna be incorporated into the rules and regulations. And we've already talked about the rewording of the educational crediting, and I think what Chief Holmes has stated is the obvious solution to that is to just have the same language in both sections where the educational points are addressed in the rules and regulations. And then I think that a lot of the rest is really just cleanup based on Jana's comments. So I'm confident that if Mr. Becker undertakes the project, he'll be able to put it in good order for you to look at potentially before the council meeting, and if not, then the Civil Service Commission will need to review the draft regulations and council will need to have a special meeting. I think the way this moves forward depends on the timing of the borough's receipt of the revised set of rules and regulations.
So does it make sense for this committee to approve moving it to council in hopes that by the time it hits council, there's been a revised version that council can then approve or not approve, and then it's gonna go to the Civil Service Commission anyway? And if it's changed again, then we would have to have another special.
Sounds so complicated.
As of today, I would just like to table this pending Attorney Becker's feedback, and hopefully we have his feedback and input that we can take action at the council meeting. You got that?
I'm not sure.
Would somebody like to make that motion? That for today we table it.
I'll make that one.
Second?
I'm not sure how that solves anything, because we just avoided talking about all the things Janet has written in her notes that we don't know
It's
about.
being reviewed.
Yeah, I
Mr.
know,
Becker
it's
is
not
going to
being-
review those.
It's not being reviewed by us, we're bypassing us, we're going to Mr. Becker, and then we're going right to council.
And you will certainly have plenty of time to review those and make your comments at the council
If we
meeting.
don't have time, then we're gonna have a special
Then we'll have a
meeting
special meeting.
following week.
So we're gonna do this at a council meeting if you don't have time.
We're gonna try to, and if not,
If we can't do it, we can't do it.
Can't do it.
Special
Well, I
meeting.
just suggested we do it before a council meeting, because as you can see, we've already spent 25 minutes talking.
we
about
can't do anything until we get feedback from Mr. Becker.
I get it.
So, there's a motion, we have a second. Motion and second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
One opposition, motion passes.
The last thing I have here is just a brief overview. We're going to start up the company level fire inspections. The primary goal with that is to get the on-duty shifts out in the community a little bit more, get them familiar with the buildings that we don't usually get into, and work on our public relations and being visible in the community outside of emergencies. Some of the key elements that they're going to focus on is making sure that the Knox boxes have the proper keys, verifying our pre-incident plans, as well as making sure we have proper contact information. We've noticed here over the first quarter that some of our some of our responses, we're not able to get a hold of the right people to come out and take care of alarm issues or restore systems if they need to be restored. Looking at smaller occupancies that the shift can get in and out of and be able to park at, if they have an incident that they have to respond to, they'll be able to leave and go handle that incident. We're also looking to incorporate them into some of our larger, more complex buildings that we have in the borough so that they see them and can become more familiar with them, especially since we've added new staff. I think it's highly important that they get comfortable with the buildings that we have.
The terminology wise, company level means our guys, what do
Yes.
you refer to as the third party?
The third party inspection would be like alarm tech systems coming out to check fire alarm system. It's a for-profit private industry.
The contractor, the
Yes.
company at the property hired to maintain their system.
Thank you.
And that's all I have.
Question. What is the position, I guess I'll call it, of the council and the fire department regarding responding to Greenfields, who will be decertified as a fire company in the next couple of days, I believe. And we do run, according to what I saw up there, even 6 calls last month to Greenfields. And I would like to mention the fact, if you saw the article in the paper about that Muhlenberg Township will receive $200,000 this year for responding to Greenfields, and will get over $300,000 the following year in responding to Greenfields. And we have, I'm not talking about like a huge conflagration now, I'm talking about normal everyday calls, if there is such a thing, that we have responded to, and so has String, so has West Reading, so has the city for years, and got 0
Well, I guess
for finances,
my question,
nothing.
the run cards should reflect the Muhlenberg assumption of responsibility for Greenfields, and the consequence of that should be a reduction in the calls to Wyomissing. Ethan should respond to that.
So
I don't know, my concern is not only that part, which he can respond to, but is the money. All of a sudden, it's good enough to get tons of money to Muhlenberg, and nothing for the other people who have helped out for years. Go ahead.
So I've had conversations with the chief out at Muhlenberg Township, and I've expressed my concerns of us running more and more out there. Historically, where we seem to respond to is the Greenfields Manor area, so the airport in the south, down to 183 along with the city. I don't foresee a huge uptick in the types of calls that we will be responding out there to. The chief from Muhlenberg, Chief Lupko, has already determined that they are going to reduce some of the general calls, accidents with unknown injuries, trees, wires down, more of the minor nature calls to reduce the impact on them, as well as the mutual aid partners that go out and respond to Muhlenberg, or respond to Bern Township. It is a highly fluid situation, and have open lines of communications with Chief Lupko about if it is too much, to cut it back and reduce that overall excess impact on us, because our primary goal is to serve the borough. Now, we do participate in a countywide mutual aid system, and if it is a large-scale incident and we're called, we would go. But the run-of-the-mill minor types of incidents, I don't see calling us out there for. I know that Chief Lupko has had conversations with most mutual aid partners to discuss all of this, and is open to suggestions and how to do it properly, so he's not inundating everybody. I agree, it is their responsibility for Muhlenberg Township. They're the ones that have agreed to manage Bern Township, here, starting April 2nd. And you know, if we see that uptick, gladly address it that we need to cut back.
What do you think of those last six, let's say last month? What would you categorize them as? Were they, I hate to use the word minor when a fire response.
Some of those are.
Yeah, the tones drop, we go.
No, I know.
Some of those that were in Greenfields and Byrne Township last month were your larger commercial occupancies that had automatic fire alarms. And that's, you know, just like we bring our neighboring agencies here to the borough for large scale incidents, they do the same.
Is there some controlling county document on mutual aid?
I would have to go back and look through the files that were handed over to me.
There's an intergovernmental
But there is.
cooperation agreement that all the municipalities are required to sign.
But what Tom's suggesting, and I don't disagree with him, may be in violation of that.
The money.
Just saying.
It seems to sound like what Muhlenberg is telling you is they will cut back on the number of mutual aid items that you have to respond to and why missing. But in fact, I'm not sure how you do that. Do you turn the switch off that why missing you respond to? Or do you do what you do? And then he says, well, what I'm trying to do is keep you guys from coming out here a lot because I know what you're asking me for. You're asking me for 50,000 or 250 that he gets. But if we're providing the mutual aid and we're going because we always go, then is he gonna call you before because he's got the 22 you've already done and you can't get the 28 because then you're gonna go back and ask him for money. It's all about money. It's not about
I would assume this is just an ongoing thing. I mean, this is just starting out, so let's just see how this
But
works out.
isn't the best way to look at this is forget about Greenfields. If the fire alarm goes off in Byrne
We
Township,
go.
Muhlenberg's gone.
Yeah.
And then we are in the run card, you know, if needed.
And what Muhlenberg did is no different than what we did with Spring Township for a period of time.
Exactly,
Yeah, so I think we're over talking.
yeah. Okay, so, anybody else have anything for Chief Holmes? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Moving on to the police department, Chief Phillips.
Good afternoon, everybody. First on my list is the large vehicle parking discussion, which was mentioned in all the comments. Jim McCarthy's office has weighed in on this, and the basic gist of this is what they're saying is that we are going to need to do a traffic study before we put something into place. Second, if we were to make this a borough-wide regulation, the traffic study is going to have to be throughout the entire borough. And we are then, if it acted, it's going to require signage. That's going to require a sign every 100 feet where the restrictions are put in place. So you can imagine when we're going to do the entire borough, it's going to get quite lengthy process and could be quite extensive as far as the cost to put those signs up. Now, what we've started to discuss then is, since the issue is right where it's at, is limiting it to that section. Forgive me, it's
It's I-1, I-2, and commercial zoning districts. I suggested to the chief and to Chris, would it be so simple as to amending the regulation, not in the zoning ordinance, because that's not where it's called out, it's in, I believe, your traffic ordinance?
Yes.
When the I-1, I-2C zoning district abuts a residential zoning district, commercial vehicle parking is prohibited on the side of the street directly abutting the residential zoning district.
So that way, we would still need to do the traffic study, but we could limit it to this area, and then the signs would only be in that area. So we're cutting down a significant portion of the borough that would require signage for it, if it were written in a way that it's a borough-wide regulation.
to
That makes a lot
find
more sense.
a truck and then put the ordinance around it. If you find another truck, you do that area.
Well, we have an existing prohibition against large vehicles, it just doesn't apply to this neighborhood. Because there is an exclusion for, was it the light industrial zone areas? So it references the zoning map only as a point of reference so that we don't have to describe a lot of streets. You know, so that it's not part of the zoning. It only references the zoning map as a source of geography, you know, shorthand for geography. But based on that shorthand for geography, the LI district is excluded from the prohibition. So what Michelle is suggesting is to simply add, I guess, an additional street to, would be public street, we said adjacent to,
So
Abutting.
for this example, Douglas is part of the area that is under the current regulations where a truck can't park, but Van Reed Road, which abuts, that Douglas comes out, is not. So Van Reed Road, the trucks are allowed to be there. So the suggestion is some kind of language that streets that abut these areas that it's not allowed, that that they're not allowed to park in that area as well. And that areas then would have to be signed so that the trucks know that they can't park right there. So Van Reed Road would be signed along the side of the street where the truck is currently parked. The other side of the street's already no parking as it is. So we would have to put signs along Van Reed Road every 100 feet. I'm trying to think now, is Van Reed Road, it goes all the way down to Park Road, but I wanna make sure that that's no parking.
That's not
on both.
residential on that side though.
That's true.
So-
So we would go between North Wyomissing and Spring Street.
Yes. It's about 3 blocks.
so it's a much more modest approach, but I think it would be effective for the needs that have been identified. And in terms of process, what I think we should do, if council or the committee wishes, would be to draft an ordinance along the lines that the chief and Michelle have described, and then give that to the engineers to look at and to produce an engineering study, and if the engineering study supports the regulation, then the committee can recommend enactment of the ordinance.
So we talked about the truck whose registration expired, that the gentleman referred to as well. Is that
Well, that would not be part of this.
It's part of the concept, but not part
No,
of
it's
this.
not part of the concept. The concept is only large vehicles. The one that Mr. Cullen was talking about is not a large.
Doesn't fit the definition in the ordinance for a large vehicle.
So we're not here about that.
I mean, I didn't know that.
No,
If it's
I-
out of inspection, that's something different.
Yeah, okay.
Right. But as far as it being a large vehicle,
Right.
that doesn't fit the current definition.
Okay, great.
So can I just ask her, but this is a commercial zone next to a residential zone?
So the actual, if you look at the zoning map, the line between light industrial and residential goes all the way up to effectively the sidewalk on the Douglas Street, the residential
Doesn't-
side.
Doesn't go down the middle of the street?
No.
It's all- okay.
Which
That's my question.
Isn't
I feel like
necessarily unusual. I mean, in this case though, I think Chris would agree the ordinance change is much easier than a zoning map change.
Yeah, I mean, it should go down the middle of the road, but it doesn't, so.
But
And
either
it's-
way, if it's the
it just
middle of
makes
the
sense.
road, I think the side where the truck's parking is gonna be the residential side.
Right, so you
Right.
wouldn't be able to park there, but the other side is no parking, so, but no, you're, I'm good.
But
I
it shows it
understand
now,
that.
it's in the middle of the road.
Just as a incidental thing here, in public comments, we heard that the truck in question here was surprised, it doesn't seem to, at least alleges that he doesn't know anything about this. Is that valid?
No. As you recall, I brought up that I was trying to get in contact with him, and when I spoke to him finally about, because he was out of town, I told him that this was going on, and that council was gonna be looking at making some kind of change here. So whether he remembers that or not, I can't say.
At one
But he was
time-
definitely told.
His trucks used to be parked on Garfield Avenue, and they were told to move.
Well,
And,
Garfield Avenue is definitely in the current.
exactly, you know, and.
Talking about distracted trail.
And, no, so now it's parked on Forest, which is still a detriment because you can't see.
I was referring to the.
Yeah, I was talking, yeah, I thought.
I thought you were
Same
referring to the
concept.
other,
Yeah.
but, okay. Oh, the tractor trailer, yeah, absolutely, yeah, he's,
No, he was definitely told.
And several of the complaints were made to Rick Weinhofer, being the council member who represents that district. He's got a lot of. Well, no, I know,
Lives in that
but
area.
he lives in Berkshire Heights, he's friends and neighbors with these guys, and they've spoken to him about the floods.
And he personally had an accident at that intersection.
Yes.
so the recommendation is that what, we need a traffic study for those 3 blocks of Van Reed, is that correct? From running from, North Wyomissing Boulevard to Spring Street. And then have the traffic study come back with the recommendation that we just put no parking signs, no truck parking signs on those 3 blocks, is that correct?
Yes.
Would somebody like to make that
But
motion?
it's not on the agenda.
Do we need them? Oh.
I mean, we can, with the committee's blessing, we can move forward, draft the ordinance, and then when it's ready, take appropriate action.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, problems with that?
Can I ask you a question? Is there any possibility this guy is gonna realize the mess that is now being created and that the nice thing to do would be to move your truck? Because it sounds like we're getting into a large process of signs every 100 feet and all this other stuff for one truck.
I don't think he's going to move his truck. If he doesn't have to move it, he's not going to move it. All right, that's the gist I get, because as was said, he's parked it there for a long time. And as it stands right now, he's legally allowed to do it. So,
I guess you just tell him his days are coming.
Okay?
Next on my agenda was the discussion regarding the parking in the 1000 block of Penn Avenue, specifically by the post office. The letter that Judy Schwank had sent to PennDOT, and then their response to her that we received a copy of, I made contact with the individual listed in the letter, Charles Richards, and discussed this issue with him via phone conversations and then his email response, which you see up on the screen now of what they suggest. What they are suggesting are the crosswalks we placed on Penn Avenue, at Trent Avenue, and down at Belmont. And they specifically want the crosswalks that have not only the lines that run parallel to each other, but the ladder type perpendicular lines between the 2 parallel lines. And then both east and westbound having the type of pedestrian crosswalks or crossing signs as like we have on Hill Avenue, going in both directions. I talked to PennDOT about any assistance in paying for this, and as he stated in the letter, that they would not. This would be the borough's responsibility to do this.
Is that before or after they got done laughing?
So, this is PennDOT's recommendation, the crosswalks we put up and the signs. I talked to him about flashing lights for the crosswalks, and he said that, I mean, that is obviously something that we could do. We would have to have that permitted, but he suggested to try these signs first, because we're not going to go through the permitting process for that.
So looking forward, Chief, what is the effect of somebody who parks directly across the street from the front door of the post office and decides he doesn't want to walk up to the corner and down to the other corner and goes straight across? Is that subject to getting a ticket or what? Is he just taking his license as
Well,
he is?
technically you're jaywalking. I mean, when you're in the street and there are places for pedestrians to be, you're in violation of the vehicle code. So a pedestrian that gets hit in the middle of Penn Avenue like that bears some responsibility to that. So we're gonna provide them a place to go that's mapped out. And it's only going to, we have this, it's going to help strengthen their culpability in that accident. Because we have a delineated place where they should be crossing. I don't know if, truthfully, I don't know putting crosswalks there is going to make people cross up there. They're gonna park where they do now in the middle of the street. In my opinion, they're probably just gonna still cross in the middle of the road. But I think we're taking steps here, at least providing a place where they can cross with a little bit more safety.
Is the reason you can't put a crosswalk directly across from the post office? Because if you look at the one on Trent, people are going to be accelerating through the light at State Hill. They're not gonna see a pedestrian, they're gonna be speeding, and that's, accident waiting to happen. On Belmont, people are usually taking a right. I mean, every once in a blue moon, somebody's gonna take a left from that intersection, but not usually. They're gonna be looking left for the traffic, they're not gonna be looking right for pedestrians, and they're gonna hit them again. And as you said, people parking on the, I guess, south side of Penn Avenue, they're not gonna walk up the hill to go to crosswalk, they're not gonna go down and then back up, they're gonna be looking for crossing in the middle of the block. So the middle of the block is the only place that makes sense for a crosswalk. Plus you have, people aren't accelerating coming, going toward Reading, and they're not, you've got plenty of line of sight coming up the hill toward the post office.
So when we put the crosswalks in the middle of Hill Avenue, I looked at some of the research with PennDOT with that. And their research, it's a smaller increase, but there is a higher increase of people being struck in crosswalks that are in the middle of the block versus those that are at intersections. With Hill Avenue, I believe that there's a difference between Hill and Penn because of the number of vehicles that travel on that roadway. So there's obviously much more traffic on Penn than there is in the 900 block of Hill. So because of that, I am not as warm and fuzzy about putting it in the middle of the block for that reason. We also then, if you put it in the middle of the block, cars are going to be, there's distance that we have to provide, you can't park right up to the crosswalk. But it's still gonna back those cars up, and it's going to interfere, I think, with people coming off that sidewalk into that crosswalk in the middle, whereas if it's at the intersections, we're not gonna have the cars right there. So I believe pedestrians are gonna be more easily seen versus there than in the middle of the block, because they're not gonna have the cars on either side of those crosswalks. Understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, but I see people going on Trent onto Penn Avenue. Some of them are just bombing down the hill to get on State Hill, but a lot of times they're taking right, they're not gonna take a left. You put the crosswalk where they're taking a right, they're not gonna pay attention to the pedestrian, they're gonna hit them.
Your line of sight is, the closer you make that to that intersection, the Trent, I mean, your line of sight cresting the hill, okay, and now you're there. And if you're moving along and you see signs and you hit the hooks or somebody's crossing the street, that person does not have the time to stop.
Well, I would say this, that when I presented all the stats of what accidents we've had here and the time frames in which this is occurring at our busier times on Penn Avenue. So if this were at, say, 8 o'clock in the evening when there's not as much traffic on Penn, that's when we start seeing higher speeds. When these are happening, the speeds are not as great as some, because the sheer amount of traffic doesn't allow for those great speeds that you're talking. because they're gonna get down here to Reading, and we have a traffic light. And so it backs up. You know, so it,
No, it's the old
there,
balance.
there's, I don't know that there's any way to make this 100% safe for anybody, right? The crosswalks at the intersections show it to be safer than in the middle. Like I said, it's not that much greater, but there is statistically safer to have them at the intersections. I believe providing it at the intersections, as I said, is gonna allow for greater visibility of those pedestrians entering those crosswalks off the sidewalks in this location than in the middle, because of allowing, we're not talking about restricting that parking. We kind of talked about that, and it didn't seem like that was where council or the committee wanted to go. So there's going to be cars parked on that side. So on Hill Avenue, where we have in the middle, there's really no parking where those are. So the people are very visible stepping off sidewalks. Whereas here, they are not going to be. So the intersections are the safer place for that.
But if you put that intersection at the crest of that hill, basically, you're emanating a bullfight, and you're telling people to move up toward the bull, because the cars going toward Reading are gonna come over the crest, and you're gonna be hopefully slowing them down because of the crosswalk. But you're also gonna have the people that we identify as those people that are gonna do it anyway. They're gonna be having another block of traffic, because they'll be walking across Penn Avenue like they always do. So you have one up here, and you're asking people, well, go up there and stand up there and walk across the street, because it's, in our mind, safer for you to be closer to the cars that are coming at you than it is coming over the hill and being right in the middle of it, where you can stop for the most part. Most people have in the last 100 years, but one person didn't. So you're actually creating two barriers, one at the top, which is asking somebody to take their life in their hands, and one that you're not going to create because you can't put one there, but people are still going to use. We know that's a fact. You can put one here and one there. The question is, are you putting people in danger if they're here versus not walking across the street that you can't ticket? That would be the right thing to do, but that would probably not work out.
Chief, what do you think about, there's no satisfactory result to this, one way or the other. It's just the way the geographic area is. What about doing what PennDOT is suggesting or recommending, and then before you get to the crest of the hill or the top of the hill, going eastbound, you put another crossing ahead sign there. Yeah.
And if we were gonna do that, and I don't think that's a bad idea, but it actually might be a good idea to do it again closer to Reading Boulevard, only because that bends to the left coming westbound. So, you can
No, I'm
kinda
saying
see
going
where-
eastbound.
I know that, but I'm saying it might not be a bad idea to do
Oh,
it
do
at
the
both
same
ends.
thing.
I would suggest if we consider doing that, we go through the process with PennDOT to get a traffic signal permit and go the flashing sign route for ultimate attention.
Can we consider not doing the one at Trent Ave, because everybody realizes that that's a dangerous spot, and only doing the one at Belmont, but the one at Belmont should be on
The
the
other side.
west-hand side of Belmont Ave.
Yes.
Because
I
when you
agree
pull
with
out, you look left, right, left, if anybody remembers from their permit test. So you're gonna look twice left, where people are crossing, versus these people pulling out of Belmont, making a right towards the city, are not paying attention to the going right, they're only paying attention to the people that they would need to speed out to beat and not get rear-ended by. So if it's on the left-hand side, it's safer, and you just have one crosswalk in a more visible spot on the left-hand side of Belmont Ave. And I think additionally, we should add the further up crossing
Well-
signs on both sides, just for safety.
We want to make this proposal to PennDOT and see what they say?
This was just a recommendation,
I mean,
not a
I hate to
requirement.
keep kicking this can down, but you know what? If we don't get their blessing, we're gonna spend the money and they're gonna tell us to take the signs out. So we're kinda like, you know, it's not that we're, you know, delaying doing anything, it's just there's a process. And we're forced to do this process. So, what do you think, John?
What I'm thinking with the Belmont, and I don't know why he drew it where he did, so I'm speculating when I say this. The way, like I said, Penn Avenue bends to the left there, that puts it on the side of the bend where traffic coming westbound are gonna more easily see it than when they start making that bend to the left, and all of a sudden now you're right on top of that crosswalk.
That's no different than the Trent Ave, like all of a sudden
But-
we're right on top of that crosswalk.
With Belmont Avenue, the amount of cars, now, I don't think we've ever put our signs up to get a count of cars there, but the number of cars, my eye test of working here all this time, we're not getting a ton of cars coming off of Belmont. The issue is going to be Penn Avenue itself. And then the cars, a lot more cars will come off of Trent than Belmont itself. Because I mean, we use that a lot to get up, because it's coming out of here, as you've all done, it's sometimes hairy, because it's that bend we're talking about, and you got the big trees, and it's hard to see cars coming eastbound.
So if they're
Trent
coming
gets
out of
used a
Trent,
lot.
then it's dangerous having it on the eastbound side of Trent.
What I would like.
But that's giving more distance for the cars, plus you're gonna have somebody cross Trent, then cross Penn,
I know.
cross Trent again.
Yeah, there's no easy answer.
It's like I said, I don't know that there's 100% for anything here.
What I would like to see, instead of this crazy drawing, is a 3D schematic of traffic lights, crosswalks, where are they, where is everything? So that we're really looking at what we're gonna be doing, because right now we're.
Ron, look out here, you can see it
Yeah, I don't
firsthand.
all wanna go out to a traffic walk to see where they're gonna be, because I don't know exactly where that crosswalk looks like. It's right in the middle of getting somebody run over. So if you can show me something that says, if I go up to the top of the hill and I park down on the right side, but I can't walk across the street, I'll walk up there and take my life in my hands. That sounds like a no-brainer. I'm not going that way. I'm walking across because there's no car coming at me, and I'll go back to my car when there's no car coming at me, which is usually how you do that.
Chief, do you have enough information that you can talk to PennDOT and say, hey, this is what council's thinking?
So what I'm hearing is you're wondering if we could move the crosswalk to the opposite side of Belmont and perhaps put pedestrian signs further west and further
Yes.
east on Penn Avenue.
Yes.
I think we also need to know where the curb cuts are, because if we want people crossing, it ought to be handicap accessible.
This is an example of the old adage about everybody that's got a driver's license in their wallet fancies themselves as being a traffic engineer. This is what PennDOT guys that do it for a living came up with, and I say we do what PennDOT said, and then we'll see where it goes.
Fine, let's bring it before council then.
I just need a, you know, where I'm going from the committee, what you want me to do.
What do you wanna do, Fred?
I say we do that,
We-
move on.
That we do that plan and move on.
We've done our best, we followed the experts' advice.
You wish to make that motion?
No motion, there's no motion on the agenda.
No.
Because we didn't know, I
Yeah,
mean,
we're
this,
having discussions, so.
it was one of those, like, the prior topic, not knowing where the conversation was
Right.
gonna go, whether a motion was warranted or not, but we can add one just on the council agenda, under the minutes.
Is there? Can we, I mean, is it an infrastructure thing maybe too, like to take it there?
You could, that's after council though.
Oh,
I would suggest just putting it on your report and, see what happens at council.
Under Michelle's report.
And Chief could do it under his report.
Chief can do it on.
It doesn't more sense.
Either one, you two find it out.
Take it. Take it, I got enough.
I did ask the chief, to contact Muhlenberg and see how these beacons / flashers that they've installed on, at some locations on Fifth Street, are they effective or not? I gave him what I had showed you. And, I understand West Reading is also considering these, but, you know, we don't have any history on these things. It certainly, once again, would be our cost, and that would not, but, you know, but according to the information that I read, that it, quote, these are approved for non-intersections.
So lastly, what I have is I wanted to just give the committee an update on our hiring process. We had 31 candidates successfully complete all of the testing phases for the written, physical agility, and the oral interviews. The candidates' scores have all been computed and they've been ranked. The ranking has been placed on our website. Each candidate was issued a number on the day of the written test, so that we put the numbers up so that they can see how people scored. I've sent individual letters to each and every one of them with their score, and I've sent letters to those that did not make it through one of the sections of the testing process, thanking them for their participation, asking that they consider us again next time we hire, that type of thing. There was one individual who did not pass the physical agility test that did appeal that loss to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission did hold a hearing on that, and they upheld the non-passing. So that individual was one of the ones I sent a thank you letter to. I just received the actual write-up on that hearing from Civil Service. There was a stenographer there, and I guess all the decision has been written down, and it's to be sent to that individual. But the individuals from Civil Service have to sign it, so that's going to be at that meeting on the 11th. So after that, he'll get the official notice from Civil Service, but he was told the day of the hearing, obviously. So the backgrounds are now being done. Per the Civil Service rules, we have to do 5 backgrounds per open position, so we have 2. So we're starting with 10, and if we don't find any issues, that's all that we will do. If we find issues, we'll move forward. So I have asked my detectives to have the backgrounds done by the 1st of May. Because my plan is then I would like to have Civil Service meet after that to then certify the list so that I can then bring that list back to the committee, and then council June meeting for conditional offers. I have one person that left out of the 31 who is a current police officer. They are currently very high on the list. I won't know till after backgrounds, but more than likely we're sending at least 1, maybe 2 to the academy. That's why I would like the June council meeting, so that then they can do their psychological, their physical, their drug test, all of that, get that done for July's academy that starts. It usually is like around the 15th, whatever that Monday around that date is when the academy starts. So that's the process. So it's moving along, and hopefully very soon June will be here, and we'll be doing the conditional offers.
31 is quite a
Good.
number.
I'm sorry?
31 is quite a number.
Yeah.
And what was the original?
Well, we had 107 applications,
That's great.
64 showed up for the written test. Out of that, we're down to 31 that have passed.
See, that it does pay to advertise.
But it, that's what we have left is more than we've had in several of the last tests I've even submitted applications. So it's been a long time, so we did really well this time. There's a lot of, I mean, listening to the people that conducted the interviews, the backgrounds that have started so far, we have several good candidates on there, it sounds like, so. Looking forward to seeing who we get here.
Okay. Anybody have anything else for the chief? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the Stonehouse safety tent. I had asked that this be put on the agenda. It's hard to believe we're getting closer to 4th of July celebration. And last year, we did have an unfortunate incident of a child who passed out for some cause or another. And it took us about 5 minutes to get EMS to them while the child was being treated until we could get professionals down there. You know, and in talking to the fire chief and to Tony Tucci at Western Berks, you know, we agreed that time frame was too long, and we needed a better way to do this. The conversation at that time had taken place about safety tents, and I understand that you gentlemen with Randy are already ahead of this game and already planning this thing out.
Well, sure. So we, Randy, myself, Chief Holmes, Jesse was at the last one. I forget if it was Tony the first one.
Yeah.
Jim, Greg, and Michelle was at the first one. We've met twice now discussing the 4th of July parade. Tom was at our last one as well. What we are looking at doing is trying, because we have a lot of people that attend this event, and this is a soft target with the number of people and the 4th of July and everything. We are looking at what we can do to try to make sure everybody's safe, and things that we could do to make it a little safer. We do have another meeting scheduled already. That meeting is scheduled for April 15th at 8:30 here. What we are asking is, we don't want to discuss in an open meeting what we're planning. This is sensitive information, you know, of how we're going to try to make things safe, prevent things from happening. I don't want this out there that gives somebody 3 months to plan on how to defeat something that we're doing. So what we would like is to have a few members of council or this committee, not enough to make it a quorum so that it would have to be an advertised meeting, but to join us so we can talk about what we have discussed thus far, to get your take as elected representatives of the borough as to what we would like to do. So I don't know if...
I'll talk to Michelle about that.
But that's the next, I guess there's some kind of meeting that day on the 15th, later that day, personnel or something like that.
It would be personnel, but currently there's nothing for that agenda, so.
Rich Hollander is the committee chair for that. So I don't know if that's something you would.
That I'll, you know, yeah.
I was gonna invite him.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he's a borough council member, or is he the chair of the committee?
Still a council.
Well, I'll follow up with you, Randy.
Chief, this would be eligible for an executive session of council or of the committee. There is an executive session topic entitled to discuss, plan, or review matters and records that are deemed necessary for emergency preparedness, protection of public safety, and security of all property in a manner that, if disclosed, would be reasonably likely to jeopardize or threaten public safety or preparedness or public protection. So if you would choose to have more people attend, you could do so.
Keep in mind though, the more people you have, the more suggestions you have, and the less that gets accomplished.
Yeah, I don't know if any of us, I mean, we all have different parts in this, so I don't know if we're ready to do that today. I know there's a
Right.
executive session, but I think maybe if we could just get some people there the 15th, or maybe after that, we have a meeting so that everybody can be filled in as to what.
I'll talk to Michelle, and I have thoughts on the matter.
Always bear in mind the rule in Berks County, 3 people can keep a secret as long as 2 of them are dead.
So,
And that's all.
okay. Anybody else have anything they wish to comment on? If not, and we have nothing for an executive session, I assume? Correct.
Correct.
Okay, great. Then, by acclamation, we are adjourned.